Hey, it's Ted McGrath, and welcome to tonight's show. So I'm going to talk about BMNR and MSTR in today's show. I'm going to break down the acquisition of new Bitcoin for strategy today. Also, BMNR buys more Ethereum. And there's interesting parallels between these two companies of how they are adding to their corporate treasury. So I'm going to break it down in English and make it simple today. So again, not tax advice, not financial advice, not legal advice. And I'm also going to talk about how these could be very big runs with both MSTR and BMNR over the next couple of months. And we're going to jump in right now. Okay, so let's start off with BMNR. It's very interesting. If you've been following my show recently, I started talking about BMNR about 6 weeks ago, and I started breaking down the fundamentals of it. So you can watch previous videos to learn about that. But ultimately, BMNR bought more Ethereum today. And so when you look at the parallels between strategy and BMNR, it's pretty fascinating because strategy is gobbling up the supply of Bitcoin. They are the largest holders of Bitcoin on the planet in terms of a company owning Bitcoin in their treasury. And they accumulated Bitcoin from 2020 to 2025. Now we look at BMNR and they're accumulating Ethereum at a rate much faster than MSTR has accumulated Bitcoin. Now, full disclaimer, not financial advice at all. I own both of these stocks. I own Strategy and I own BMNR. What's really interesting is today there was a release of a press release where BMNR bought more shares of Ethereum. But the really interesting thing is that they sold these shares. They sold about 5.22 million shares, and they sold them at $70 per share. So actually, this was done last week when the stock price was around $61. So they actually sold them at a premium. So when you look at them going into the market and they're selling shares at an actual premium, the stock price being around $61 at the time. If you were following BMNR last week, it even got up as high as 64 on Friday. But they sold the shares at $70, which is about a 14% premium to where the stock was actually at. Now, the question is, who would pay for that? So they did what's called a direct offering. And to put it in English, because I like to keep all financial terms simple, the direct offering means they sell shares to a small group of big investors. So they sold those 5.22 million shares to a small group of big investors who decided that they're willing to pay $70 per share for BMNR because they think the stock is worth it. And clearly, Tom Lee and his group was very convincing to say, hey, buy it at $70. Now, number one, they're doing something similar to what Strategy does. They are still issuing more shares. So that is dilutive in the short term to the shareholders. Strategy also did this on Sunday. They bought more Bitcoin. They issued more shares to buy more Bitcoin. They bought $100 million more of Bitcoin, and now they hold 639,000 Bitcoin. So both of these companies are using similar strategies, no pun intended, in different ways. BMNR using the strategy to issue more shares to buy Ethereum, and MSTR issuing more shares to buy Bitcoin. The interesting thing about the BMNR play, and you could say the same thing for Strategy because they've done very creative ways to get money to buy more Bitcoin. And BMNR has got very creative ways to get more money to buy Ethereum. And the interesting thing about BMNR is they're like, great, we're going to show the market that even though we issue shares to acquire Ethereum, and even though we know it's temporary dilutive to the shareholders, we're going to issue them at a premium. We're going to get big investors to pay $70 per share instead of $61 per share. And that's what they did. And that equated to about 360 million or so, 365 million of more dollars coming in to BMNR so that they can go buy more Ethereum. Sound familiar? Right? This is the MSTR playbook at its best. Tom Lee executing the MSTR playbook, but executing it with BMNR to buy Ethereum. Now, just to give you the quick snippet, if you're just joining us also, if you don't know the history of MSTR, if you don't know the history of BMNR or about the company, if you want to understand and learn more about this, you can go down below when the show's over. If you're watching this recording, the link's there now. I have a new book out called Money Game. I'm giving you the digital version completely free. And so I go in length and in depth about MSTR and their playbook. I talk about why 10% rates of return keep you poor after taxes, inflation, asset inflation, management fees, etc. I talk about the history of the Fed. I talk about the history of money. I talk about MSTR. I talk about Bitcoin. I talk about BMNR. It's all in the book. So if you want to get a real good understanding of how all of this works, and you maybe a first time watching the channel, go get the book, and it's totally free. I'm going to give it to you free until the book's released on Amazon, where people will pay for it, which will be in about 10 days. All right. So this is your opportunity to get it free and get a real good understanding about how all of this works. I'll tell you more about this in a minute. But in the meantime, if you have not followed BMNR, just to give you the quick synopsis of why this is a hot stock right now, again, not financial advice, but you should get educated on it, is because the play of what's going on with Ethereum. And if you've heard Tom Lee talk, and he is basically the spokesperson for BMR, he's also the chairman. And he talks a lot about Ethereum, and he talks about why BMNR is buying up Ethereum, and the fact that Wall Street is moving, and we now have Project Crypto, where the goal is to move real world assets like stocks and bonds and also real estate and tokenize them, wrap them up into a token, put them on the blockchain, and give people the ability to buy these now 24/7, 365. So what does that mean? That means that a stock that you can only trade 10 to 12 hours a day right now, you can then go on the blockchain on Ethereum per se, and you can actually trade that stock 24/7, 365 because it's tokenized. And this is Project Crypto. This is Wall Street's move to crypto, and it's already happening. And they're moving on to Ethereum in the main. They're obviously moving on to other blockchains too, and there will be more things happening with other blockchains, but Ethereum in the main because Ethereum is the most trusted. So there's a huge move with that. If you didn't watch my previous videos, go back and watch them. The stablecoin market is booming. Over 50% of the stablecoin market is on Ethereum. Scott Bessent has said, and has been quoted multiple times widely, where he believes that the stablecoin market could go to $4 trillion. The stablecoin market right now is $200 and something million. That's like a 20x growth from where we're at. And so most of those stablecoins right now are on Ethereum, and they have to be backed 1-for-1 by the US dollar. So basically, the Ethereum blockchain is now in bed with the banks, because if every stablecoin that's issued on the Ethereum blockchain has to be backed by $1, and every stablecoin in general that's issued has to be backed by $1, they're backing them by dollars or US Treasury bills. And now the banks are in bed, and they want to see Ethereum succeed. They want to see stablecoin succeed. And that means there's going to be more gas fees and more transactions on Ethereum. It's happening. It's happening before our eyes. So any talks of Ethereum might not be in the best chain or might be dead. Those talks are pretty much gone when you see that the US government, or I should say the banks, are behind it. And when you see that Wall Street is heavily moving onto the blockchain. So if you haven't heard more about that, go watch my previous videos. You can also get my book for free, which goes heavily into that. Okay. So that's the basic synopsis. But the news today is, that the fact that BMNR did buy, sold more shares and picked up more Ethereum. Now, when you look at this direct offering, they went to the marketplace and they said, pay us a premium for our stock. It's trading at 61, pay us $70. So that's a good indicator that bigger investors are willing to pay a premium for the stock right now. Now, if you look at today's stock, it dropped all the way down to 55, and it even touched like $54.90 on BMNR. Just the other day, it was up at 61, even went up as high as 63 to 64. So it's volatile as hell. It moves like crazy, but it's something definitely to watch. And again, I am invested in it, not financial advice. So we're looking at some major stuff happening in the marketplace with this. The second thing is, it's interesting. If you go read the headlines about this, you have to translate all this into English because it's all Wall Street talk. And it says that there are warrants that were also thrown as a sweetener. So when they go out to these big investors, they say, hey, big investor, buy our shares at a premium, which is the big investors did. Big investors bought the shares at $70. Shares were trading at 61. So big investors buy lots of shares from us. They did. They bought 5.22 million shares. And so big investors buy shares. Then they say, hey, big investors, for buying the shares, we'll sweeten the deal, and then we will throw in some warrants. And basically, these are warrants that have to be exercised before 2027. And what does that mean in English? Okay, the warrants are basically an option for these investors to buy the stock at a strike price, meaning they have to buy it at that price at $87.50. So in the future, when the BMNR stock goes up, big investors can go, hey, stock is up. Stock is now at $100. I am going to actually use the warrants that you gave me, the sweetener. I'm going to use the warrants and I'm going to buy them at the $87.50 strike price because the stock is now at $100 and I'm now going to make $12.50 profit per share. Okay. So if they do that, if you look at just the new shares they sold in the marketplace recently, BMNR, that's $350 million. If the warrants get issued in the future, when the stock goes over $87.50, if it happens, you're looking at like another $900 million worth of stock that's going to be bought by these same investors because that was the sweetener for them to do the deal. Make sense? So that's how the game works. And so when you look at all this stuff, it's a very, very interesting play to watch this because what you're looking at is you're looking at a combination of Wall Street when their incredible manipulation of how to leverage dollars, and they're merging with the world of crypto and the digital revolution. And the thing that's interesting with Tom Lee is he's had the ear of Wall Street, for many, many, many years. I mean, he was on CNBC talking about Bitcoin when it was at $1,000 or $2,000, getting chewed out by somebody interviewing him saying, what are you, crazy? Put 1% of your portfolio in Bitcoin? And look at it today. Bitcoin's not $1,000. Bitcoin's $112,000 today. If you're wondering why Bitcoin dropped today, there are massive liquidations in the marketplace today. Huge liquidations. I think it was like $1.5 billion worth of liquidations. And so I think we may chop in September for the next couple of days. And then I expect in October and November, we're going to moon. So I'm not concerned about it. Not concerned about the strategy drop either. Strategy's down to about 336 today after we saw it shoot up to 352 last week. Strategy is a very unique stock. Because a large percentage of that stock is owned by institutional investors. Okay. And institutional investors, from my personal point of view, they're not going to get in the game and buy high. They're going to wait till the sucker goes low. They're going to load up. And then when the bull run comes, the sucker's going to moon. Now, if you look at strategy, their MNAV right now, which is basically the premium that people are willing to pay for the stock. So when you hear all this terminology thrown around, let's just say that NAV means net asset value. So strategy now holds a certain amount of Bitcoin on their balance sheet, right? It's the amount of Bitcoin they have minus their liabilities. It's right around $40-something billion that strategy holds on the balance sheet. So, but the valuation of that in terms of Bitcoin that they bought, but the valuation of it is much, much higher, right? The valuation of strategy and their stock is much, much higher. So they're trading at a 30% premium. So instead of somebody paying for what the stock would be worth compared to what its net asset value of Bitcoin is, people are willing to pay a 30% premium for the stock. So when you hear 1.31 or 1.3 of MNAV for strategy, that means that the market is willing to pay a 30% premium over what the stock, quote unquote, should be worth. Make sense? Now, when you look at BMNR, it's in a very, very similar situation because the market is also willing to pay more than what the stock is actually worth. Now, if you look at the math today, it changes so frequently because BMNR was at $61 on Friday and it dropped all the way down to $55 today. And I think it closed around $56. So the MNAV's constantly changing, which is the premium that people are willing to pay for the stock over the net asset value of, if it's strategy, it's the Bitcoin they have that on the balance sheet. If it's BMNR, it's Ethereum that they have on the balance sheet. Make sense? Okay. Now, Ethereum's a little bit different. BMNR is a little bit different because while strategy holds 100% Bitcoin on their balance sheet, and that's all they hold, maybe a little bit of cash, right? BMNR holds Ethereum is the majority of what they hold on their balance sheet. They hold some Bitcoin on their balance sheet. They hold some cash on their balance sheet. And they also invested in a moonshot recently, which was Sam Altman's company or his technology that had to do with WorldCoin, which was basically another reason why people are going to be moving to Ethereum, because based on that technology, eventually in the future, you're going to have what's called proof of human, which is happening right now. And proof of human basically means, how do we know you're a human? With all the AI stuff that's emerging in the marketplace right now, and people are like, how do I trust if this person's actually human? What better place than to verify whether somebody's a human than the blockchain? And where do you think they're going to be moving the technology to verify whether somebody's a human? On the blockchain and on Ethereum. So Ethereum is going to be a chain that's used for this proof of human. The very poor metaphor of this is like, when you used to have your Instagram account and be verified on your Instagram account, and like, oh, you're truly verified. Somebody could hack that. They could change that. A bot could come in. It's easy to falsify that. Now, with that technology, you literally have to go in and they scan your freaking iris, and they know based on your eye that you're actually the human that's activating, and you're the one who's actually using and active on the blockchain. Make sense? Okay, so they can tell whether you're a bot or whether you're actually a human. And so that's a whole nother reason why you see more and more Wall Street moving to the blockchain, because they're moving to the blockchain because of Project Crypto. They're moving to the blockchain because of the Stablecoin Act that was passed with the Genius Act. And they're moving to the blockchain because proof of human is going onto the blockchain. And I don't think anybody here is going to disagree with the fact that AI is here, it's real, and we are going to have proof of human in the future. And so these things are happening on the blockchain, and they're happening heavily on Ethereum. So why is BMNR a smart stock to watch? Those are the reasons why, man. Okay, why am I heavily invested in it? Those are the reasons why. And also, when you look at these two companies, their MNAV, they're trading at a premium right now, maybe in the 20-something percentile above their net asset value of their Ethereum and what's on their balance sheet. So they're trading at a lower premium than what MSTR is. Okay, so they're both low in terms of the premium that they're trading to the value of the Ethereum on the balance sheet or the Bitcoin for strategy on the balance sheet. Okay, now in a bull market, these two, the NAV tends to go higher. So the MNAV tends to go higher. So we should be looking out in October and November for the MNAV to go higher. I don't think that the MNAV for strategy is going to stay at 1.3 over the next 2 months. Historically, we look at October and November are really good months for crypto. We know that the cut just happened with the Fed in September, and which was a couple days ago. And so we know that more money's flowing into the economy. That money is going to go into risk on assets, and people are going to put money into Bitcoin. They're going to put money into Ethereum, and they're also going to put money into strategy and BMNR. And October and November, I think, is going to moon. So do I expect the MNAV of strategy to stay at 1.3 or wherever it is today? No, I expect it to go higher. We'll also look, if you trace it back, to see what strategy was trading at back in 2024 with its MNAV. Its MNAV was up around 2, and that was more of the average above 2. It had times where it was a 3, and it had times where it was 4. So one could say that strategy could potentially get to a 2 MNAV again during the bull run. Let's see. I think it's very possible. And then one could also say that with BMNR, because they're very new, the interesting thing about BMNR is they are acquiring Ethereum at 10 times the rate that strategy acquired Bitcoin when they started. Now, strategy started in 2020. Hats off to Saylor. He's the innovator. But BMNR, now that they have the playbook, is accumulating Ethereum way faster than strategy was able to accumulate Bitcoin. And so when you look at the current holdings of Ethereum, BMNR's goal is to hold 5% of the supply. They now hold, as of their recent purchases of Ethereum, 2% of the supply of Ethereum right now. 2%. And we're talking about just a month ago, they had about 1% of the supply. Now they're up to 2% of the supply. So where are they going to end up in terms of the percentage of their supply of Ethereum in October and November when we start to moon towards the tail end of the bull run here? So this is interesting, right? This is very, very interesting. So you look at the amount of Ethereum that BMNR holds. It's about 2.416 million Ethereum tokens. As I said before, they hold some Bitcoin on their balance sheet as well. They hold some cash, and they hold some of Sam Altman's new I think the company rebranded. It was Octo, and they might have rebranded as well. But the coin is World Coin, and then I think they rebranded it to World recently. Okay, so and that's the moonshot where they invested in it, and it seems like it might pay off for them. Okay, so that is the game of what's happening in the marketplace now. When you look at strategy and BMNR, they are highly traded stocks. So when you look at the market capitalization of them compared to other massively large companies out there, they are very highly traded. Like MSTR is constantly in the top 20 and 30 of traded stocks in the marketplace. BMNR is in the top 20 something of stocks traded in the marketplace. BMNR trades over $3 billion, $3 billion worth, I should say, per day. So that's a high degree of trading going on with this company. And you know, it's freaking a hot stock right now. I trade it on a daily basis, and I do very well trading the stock as well. Okay, so these are just interesting things that are happening, and I wanted to share them with you. I wanted to let you know what was going on with BMNR. In summary, if you look at what's happening, because it sometimes gets confusing when you look at the different ways that these companies, BMNR and Strategy, acquire for Strategy Bitcoin, and for BMNR Ethereum. So you look at all these different methodologies, but ultimately they have one very simple thing in common. Tom Lee and BMNR, they do issue more shares to buy more Ethereum. They just did it. Okay. It was called a direct offering, but it's issuing more shares. That's what it is. They didn't do it in the marketplace to where they were going to go to you and me and say, buy more shares. Here, we issue more shares, buy it. They went to investors, a small group of big investors, and they said, buy our stock at a premium. And people paid $70 for the stock, these investors, when the stock was at 61 in the regular market. That shows confidence that investors have in it. Very similar to Strategy's playbook, where they issue more shares to buy more Bitcoin. They issued more shares today. 80% of their acquisition of Bitcoin today, which was around $100 million, a little less, 99 million, 80% was from issuing more shares, common shares. Some of it came from their preferred stock. So what we know about these two organizations are they are leveraging traditional Wall Street plays of issuing more shares and creating innovative financial products so that they can raise more money to buy more of what they want. For Strategy, they want to buy more Bitcoin. For Ethereum, for BMNR, they want to buy more Ethereum. It's really that simple. So when the headlines come out and you see 5.22 million shares, bought up, issued today by BMNR, and it's a direct offering, and it's blah, 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 and then there's warrants that come with it. All it means is they're using creative ways to get people to give them more money so they can buy Ethereum, if you want to simplify it. If you want the breakdown of exactly what it means, go back and watch the earlier part of the video because I broke it down for you, okay? So they're doing this, and they're smart, and they're leveraging Wall Street's playbook. Whether you agree with it or not, I don't quite agree with it. Tons of manipulation going on there in terms of how leverage works, but they're leveraging the playbook to get into the new game, which I do agree with, which is the blockchain, which is Bitcoin and Ethereum, and it's not going away. And so it's a very, very, very exciting time. And so that is the story of what's happening in the marketplace. I would watch BMNR because if you make the comparison and you go, hey, I wish I got into Strategy years ago. Now, I got into Strategy in 2024 of February. My first buy of Strategy was when it was at $79, and I bought a lot at 79, a lot at 100, a lot at the low hundreds, okay? So when you look at getting in on something early, and you look at the playbook that BMNR is running, they're running a very, very, very similar playbook that Strategy's running. And they are so new to the dance right now. So for me, I took a big position in BMNR because I'm like, I was right about Strategy and I killed it on Strategy, and I'm still holding Strategy. So the majority of my portfolio right now is Strategy, okay? I did sell off a very, very small percentage and bought some more BMNR when BMNR was lower, okay? But the bulk of my portfolio is Strategy. I hold a lot of Bitcoin, and I hold a big chunk of BMNR. And the reason I invested in BMNR is because of what the company is actually doing and where Ethereum's going and how Wall Street is moving to the blockchain, okay? When I heard that news and you heard Tom Lee talk about it over and over and over again, it's hard to ignore the facts of what's actually happening, okay? So take a look at it, get educated on it. I did not want to miss out on it, and I'll share with you personally, I got excited 6 weeks ago, and I was like, listen, I know this thing's probably going to drop, but I'm getting in now. I bought in at $60 was my cost basis. Right now it's at 55. So, and then I traded over the last 6 months to lower my cost, not last 6 months, 6 weeks to lower my cost basis. So in trading and picking up lots of profits trading, I probably lowered it to about $48 now. So would I buy more at today's price? Yes. Because I believe that we're going to see BMNR go over $100 in the next couple months, and I think it could go higher. That's just my personal prediction. Now, when you look at it, clearly you have to believe that Ethereum is going to go up, and Ethereum is going to go beyond where it's at right now. And when you hear Tom Lee and you hear other people talking about Ethereum, obviously Tom Lee is vested in this and has personal interest in this. So do I. He talks about Ethereum going beyond 8,000, 10,000, 12,000 possibility. So simple math just goes, if I know that Ethereum is trading at $4,200 right now, And if I believe that Ethereum could go to 8,000, that's a double. And I know that BMNR is trading at $55 right now. Does that mean that we could see a double with BMNR? Yes. And the fact that BMNR is trading at a premium to its net asset value of its Ethereum and its other holdings. So people are willing to pay more for the stock, and the stock tends to go up more than what Ethereum rises. Okay. So I think during the bull run that BMNR is going to go up more comparatively than Ethereum. So Ethereum is going to go up $1. I think BMNR is going to go up by a little more, and it might go up by a lot more. So I'm playing the bet that BMNR is going to crush it, which is why I don't own Ethereum. It's why I own BMNR. Make sense? And again, when you look at this, these are leverage plays. They're very, very risky. You have to have a lot of confidence in what you're doing, because at the same time, when the market runs, which I believe we're going to see a big run in October and a big run in November, when it runs, you see the MNAV, meaning the MNAV of BMNR and the MNAV of strategy, I believe will expand, and I believe you'll see it go higher. And so if Ethereum goes up $1, BMNR is going to go up more. And as the bull run hits more, it's going to go up even more than it's going up right now, in my opinion. And strategy, same thing. I don't think we're going to see strategy sitting at 1.3 MNAV. I think it's going to go up higher during the bull run. Time will tell. We'll see. That's why I'm holding on to strategy. And as the bull run settles down, which, there is talk that we will see in 2026, we may see a continuation where we won't have a winter. I think we're going to have a winter. And at least it's going to get chilly for sure. So I'm not sitting here planning on holding on to strategy and holding on to all of strategy and all of BMNR beyond November and December. So I'm going to be looking. I'm going to be looking to hit my certain targets. And at a certain point, I'm going to be taking profits on the stock. And the reason being is because, do I believe in them long-term? Absolutely. Will I hold a certain portion of them long-term? Probably. Let's just see if I hit my targets and where we go. But the point is, when the winter comes, these stocks that hold Bitcoin in their treasury or Ethereum in their treasury, they're hot when it's hot and they're not when it's not. And that's just the reality of it. So one could ride it way up, and we could hit a bear market and ride that sucker way down. And so holding strategy in BMNR, and this is just the full disclaimer because I want you to just take your own viewpoint on it, but just hear my viewpoint on it, which is just very simply this. When we hit a bear, if we hit a bear, like strategy is going to dump and BMNR is likely going to dump. So from my own point of view, I'm going to take profits. Okay. And that's it. So if you want more in depth on this, you can go get the book Money Game. I've been working on this book for a while. It's very up to date. It talks about strategy. It talks about BMNR. It talks about Bitcoin. It talks about Ethereum. It breaks it down in very, very, very simple language. And ultimately, it really talks about the problem that we have in our system. And it'll be in the link down below. But it talks about the problem we have in our system. And at the end of the day, 10% rates of return don't cut it. And I break it down in the book to share the truth with people that when you factor in inflation, when you factor in taxes, when you factor in management fees, and if you own a 401k, you should go check and take a look at your management fees. All right. Lots of 401k plans have 1% management fees depending on the funds that you're in. A 1% management fee over 30, 40 years can wipe out 30% of your portfolio. So when you take into account management fees, when you take into account taxes, when you take into account inflation, and then when you take into account asset inflation, which is not something that's really talked about when the Fed comes on and they talk about the CPI and they say, hey, inflation's around 2-point-something%. When you really look at what's happening in the real world, it's not that they're lying, they're just not telling the whole truth. And so when you look at asset inflation of assets that you actually want, when we look at what happened with COVID, clearly there was a huge amount of printing and increase in the money supply. And you have lots of money that comes into the marketplace, and you have so much money chasing so few houses. And so you have that money that's pushing up the housing prices. And so when you look at asset inflation is real because you can see houses going up at 5% a year, 6% a year. You can see rents going up. And when you look at wages, not really catching up to the increase of assets. And if somebody wasn't in the stock market at these times, those who were in the stock market were like, great, I rolled the stock market all the way up. Your assets went up. the majority of the population in the world who wasn't in the stock market and don't have those kinds of comparative dollars of like they might have 10,000 in the stock market, but they're trying to go get a house that's 200 or 300,000, and the house is $300,000 and it's going up by 6%. That just went up by 18,000, right? And they're holding on to maybe $10,000 in stock that went up 10%, 15%, 20%. Oh, great, I made $2,000. The house I want just went up by $18,000. That's asset inflation, man. Make sense? And so this is a thing that's not talked about enough on the planet, and certainly is going to be talked about by Wall Street, and it's not going to be talked about by the Fed, because that's the real cost of things that you actually want. And some of these things are included in the CPI, but they're not included, and they don't give the full story of how it actually works. Even on rents and houses, they give rent estimates. They don't give the exacts on it. It's rent estimates. So they walked around to people who own houses and they say, hey, those of you who own houses, how much would you rent your house for if you were to rent it? And then all of a sudden we have printing of money in the marketplace. The housing market goes hot and the housing prices shoot up. That doesn't take into account for the increase in the housing prices. When I said my rent would have been this, okay, I said that maybe 6 months ago. I'd get this for my rent. Well, my house just went up by 10, 15%. The rents would be higher at this point. So all this data that's accumulated is put in the CPI is not fully accurate, and it's not actually what happens when you go out into the marketplace and you're like, hey, I want to go buy a house. I want to go buy even stocks. I want to go rent a place. All these assets cost more, and people's wages aren't keeping pace with it. So the real cost of living, when you factor in 10% rates of return in the market, when somebody's making 10% of the rates of return in the market, they're not. You factor in taxes, you factor inflation, you factor in asset inflation, you factor in management fees, and a 10% return feels more like 2%. And that's the real reality, guys. 100% the reality. So you got to look when you're looking at your money today. It's not what does it say in my account. It's like, what does that do for my purchasing power? And there's a lot of talk, that sometimes you'll hear the Fed come on and they'll talk about the PCE, which is like a different way to talk about CPI. Like, what is the price of goods and services? How much are they going up by? But sometimes they'll strip out food and they'll strip out energy prices. So they strip all those out because they're too volatile and they're too erratic. But them stripping it out doesn't tell the real story of your life. When you go to the supermarket and you got to buy avocados and eggs and you're wondering why they're so much more damn expensive, you're like, this is a real cost to me. So you cannot pay attention to what the Fed says about CPI as the only and sole factor of how inflation is actually impacting your pocketbook. And even if you were to factor that in and you just took management fees, the CPI that the Fed gives, and taxes, your 10% returns just got stripped down to 5%. Then you add in asset inflation and you're more down to 2%. So today you can't play in the game of Wall Street and you can't live in the traditional game and get ahead. You got to figure out and you got to understand plays like this. I'm not saying invest in it. I'm just saying understand what's going on. Understand when you see a brilliant strategy coming in from BMNR that literally is mirroring what Michael Saylor just did with strategy and just did with buying Bitcoin. And it's at the early stages of it. One cannot look away and go, I should not pay attention to this. And, ultimately to think that we are late in the game, guys, it's not true. It's still early. I was sitting with a very, very, very prominent dude in the financial industry last night. I'm not going to say what he's doing because it would give it away and you could Google him, and I want to keep his confidentiality. But as I was talking to him about what he's doing, I said, yeah, with what you're doing, you need to be on the blockchain. And I was educating him on how the blockchain works, of why Wall Street's moving there. And he's heavily involved in Wall Street. Like, you can imagine the people involved in Wall Street. This guy's at the top of the chain, man. Top of the chain. And I'm like, dude, like, this is what's going on. Like, your entire industry of Wall Street, your cronies, they're going in this direction. This is happening. So if you're going to compete in that space like you are, I'm giving him advice on this, you have to be on the blockchain. So we've been talking about this. I'm actually helping him with it as well. And it's great because I get to get education from him on the Wall Street side because he's like big time in that space. And he gets to get education from me on the crypto side. All right. And it was an amazing dinner because I got to get his viewpoint, understanding from just a traditional way of thinking, how he thinks. But he was very, very open to my viewpoint. I'm sending him my book. He's like, I can't wait to read the book. If you're just joining us, you go get the book with the links down below. It's my new book. It's coming out. It's not on Amazon yet. It will be on Amazon in the next 10 days. You guys can get the digital copy for free. Okay. But he was fascinated because he started watching these videos. He's like, wow, you're really onto something with what you're talking about. And I know, and you guys know, because we're all in the community, we are onto something here. Major. And so what I can say to you is strategy is not dead. Okay, we're going to have a very, very nice run in October and November. That's my prediction. So I'm still holding on to my strategy. And I am excited as heck for BMNR. Excited as all can be, man, because they are following strategy's playbook. And they're not just like, you can say there's a bunch of other crypto treasury companies out there that are following the strategy playbook. Yeah, but nobody's dominating the space like BMNR. They own the most Ethereum, just like strategy owns the most Bitcoin. And nobody's going to catch them. Nobody's going to catch them. So, and let's not forget that Michael Saylor has created this goodwill, and has created this social capital in the marketplace by doing what he says he's going to do and doing it week after week after week after week. It's why he's got institutional money. When you look at different sources, some sources will say 50% of the people who invest in strategy are institutional investors. Some will say 60, some will say 40. Let's call it the middle. 50% of the money going into strategy is institutional investors. BlackRock owns a huge chunk of strategy. Huge chunk of strategy. So these are brilliant leaders of these companies, and they're also brilliant voices of these companies, and they're also trusted voices of these companies, and they continue to do what they say they're going to do, which is why the market trusts them. Now, Tom Lee's on a whole new level from the perspective of his social capital, because he is literally Wall Street's poster boy. All right, this guy says it's going to happen, and most of the time it happens. And he's got Wall Street. He is in their ear. They listen to him. They trust him. And if he says, hey, Ethereum is going to be hot because of Project Crypto, because of what's going on in the stablecoin marketplace, because of what's going on with Proof of Human, and he keeps talking about it, and you'll notice he keeps telling the same story over and over and over again. Go watch one of his interviews. And he even says this is like the 1971 moment for Wall Street. You remember in 1971 when we came off the gold standard, which is the worst thing we could have ever possibly done. That's when Wall Street was born. And Tom Lee says, Wall Street would be a small industry if it weren't for us going off the gold standard in 1971 with Nixon, because they wouldn't be able, and he doesn't say this, but this is me saying this, they wouldn't be able to manipulate the dollar the way they're manipulating it. Once they created a synthetic dollar, Tom calls it a synthetic dollar. Let's just call it what it is, a fake dollar, dude. It's a fake dollar. Once the fake dollar was created, what did they do? They took the damn fake dollar and they leveraged it over and over and over and over again. And that's what Wall Street is built on. So like it or not, that's where the money is moving now. It moved to Wall Street in 1971. Where's it going now? Wall Street is going to go where they can make more money. Okay? They're going to go to where they make more money. You like going to 7-Eleven at 4 a.m. in the morning? Yeah, because they're open. Right? You want to go trade crypto? You want to go trade crypto? You can trade 24/7, 365. You want to go trade this stock, BMNR? You can't trade it 24/7, 365. You want to go buy strategy? You can't trade it 24/7, 365. You want to go buy NVIDIA? You can't trade it 24/7, 365. Where are you going to buy it? You're going to buy it when they tokenize these assets and they put them on the blockchain. So the metaphor that Tom Lee's talking about, he says, we are in our 1971 moment. When we came off the gold standard, the dollar sprung up the whole industry of Wall Street. Now, Wall Street is taking that fake dollar, okay? They're taking it. We've gotten so far away from the truth. It's disgusting, right? But they're taking that fake dollar, and now they're taking that, and they're wrapping up their stocks, and they're wrapping up their real estate, and they're wrapping up their bonds, and they're tokenizing them. We're going to tokenize them, and they're throwing it on the blockchain, most of it, a lot of it going on Ethereum, and they're going to sell it 24/7, 365, because Wall Street is going to go where the money is. And if you go to Wall Street or you ask anyone on the street and you go, hey, would you rather people buy your stuff 10 or 11 hours a day, or would you rather them buy it 24 hours a day? Hey, I got an opportunity for people to buy your stuff 24 hours a day. You want to do it? You think Wall Street's going to say yes or no? They already said yes. That's what Project Crypto is about. So like it, don't like it, disagree with it, I personally think the system is not good. I personally think the system can do a lot better. And I personally think that the system, when we got off the gold standard, literally, I think it destroyed America. And it certainly destroyed our financial system. And it's happened, and we are not getting out of debt. The U.S. is not going to get out of debt. We're $34 trillion in debt. They don't plan to get out of debt. They're just going to keep refinancing the debt and hitting the money printer. So with that, it's like if we aren't going back to the gold standard, if we're living in this manipulated world, and you know, if you want to learn more about this, you know, again, go get my book, because if you want to get into if you want to understand how it all works, like if you want to understand how does the Fed actually work, I break it all down for you. If you want to understand like how does the 401k industry actually work, there's $41 trillion in 401k plans and retirement plans and pension plans. 41 trillion. 41 trillion. Why do they have the 10% penalty? Why does that exist? Why do they not want you touching your money till you're 59 and a half? Go look. Go look, okay? It's all in my book, but go look. I break it down step by step, but they are leveraging your money. And I'm like, okay, in my book, I talk about, okay, that's cool. Like, you want to leverage my money. I got it. You know something about money. You know the game. I'm like, here's the current scene. What you're doing in 401k plans, I don't agree with it. Right? You want to take my money. Let's go into business together. Let's do this deal. How many of you would do this deal? Okay, I'm going to go into business with you. You put in all the money. I'm not going to put in anything. And you can't actually touch your money. I can touch it all I want. Like, you put the money in, I'll touch it all I want, but you can't touch the money you put in. You put it all in, but you can't touch it. And if you do touch it, I'm going to penalize you 10%. But hey, I'm going to give you a tax deduction right now. And you can take that tax deduction, but it's not really a tax deduction. It's just a tax delay, because when you take all the money out, I'm going to tax the hell out of it. But I'll make you feel good so it feels better in your pocket today, but it's going to get worse in the future. And I'll use your money and I'll turn it over many times. Like, it's your money. You got to put it all in. I'll turn it over many, many times. I'll leverage it. I'll invest it. I'll use it. And I'll make way more on that money that you put in, but you can just get the return you get on your stocks, which is about 10% if you're lucky. How many of you would do that deal? How many of you would do that deal? Nobody would do that deal. It's the worst deal ever. It's the most horrible deal ever. That's the 401k plan. They are leveraging the money. So I'm like, great. You want to leverage the money? If I were to put money in there, you want to leverage the money, $41 trillion of people putting money into these plans. Give them a better deal, dude. Give a better deal. Like, great. You're going to go make 500% of my money. And I'm giving you conceptual. I'm not giving you factual data on this, right? They do leverage it multiple times. Let's say you're going to go earn 100% of my money. 100% of my money. Give me a piece, dude. Give me a piece. But I'm sitting here hoping for 10% of my 401k plan in a bunch of funds that you can pick. I was sitting with my friend the other day just to help him out. I'm like, dude, let me help you out. Like, let me look at your 401k plan. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a tax advisor. I just want to see. I'm not going to give you any advice. I'm just going to tell you what I would do if I had one of these, because I had one of these before. Just tell you what I would do. And you look at the list of the menu and it's like this fund and this fund and this fund and this fund. And it doesn't even look like English. I'm like, dude, just go look at the fees, dude. Go look at the fees. So if I'm hoping for 10% and you're pulling out a management fee of 1%, or maybe it's 0.8%, or maybe it's 1.2%, then I'm going to get taxed at the end of the game. Then you're going to hit me with inflation that I'm getting hit with every year that's supposed to be 2.7% or 3%, which it's not. I'm going to get hit with asset inflation, which makes inflation higher. At the end of the day, I'm getting robbed, dude. Robbed. And that's the game. So why do I love crypto? Why do I love Bitcoin? Why do I love Ethereum? Because it's a new technology. And I love Bitcoin because it's based on truth. And sure, you're going to have the players come in and they're going to do things that they do. They're going to create leverage. I don't think there's anything wrong with leverage to a certain degree, but heck, man, at least help the smaller guy out. So that's the game. And so we got this merging of a system that was sprung up after 1971 gold standard. We got taken off the gold standard, and this whole big business of Wall Street that sprung up over the next 50 years into the largest, massive industry, huge industry. And now that industry where all the money is, lots of the money is now moving to the blockchain. So follow the money. And I can only say this from an educational piece. For me, I'm going to get mine on this, right? I'm going to follow it. I'm going to pay attention, and I'm going to get my payday. Okay. And so you do what you want, because I can't give you advice on it. Okay. But that is the story. So if you want to hear all about it and you want to get it, because the one thing is, if I'm going to invest, and this is the last thing I'll say, I need to go back and trace back the source of money. I need to go back and trace the source of the creation of the Federal Reserve. I need to go back and find out when we went off the rails. Because how can one truly, fully, 100% grasp Bitcoin if they don't fully understand how money works and when we went off the rails? You have to understand that. And you have to trace it back to the source. Okay? So I've traced it back to the source. And I have data points and I have facts, and it's all in the book. And you should go read the book. I'm not selling the book to you right now. I told you weeks ago, months ago, when it came out, I would give it to you for free. This is your opportunity to go get it for free. Okay. So go back to the source, get a solid understanding of what world we're living in, get a solid understanding of the manipulation of the currency, get a solid understanding of how money gets printed and how it all works, get a solid understanding of what 401k plans are and how that money is pooled into trillions of dollars of funds. Get a solid understanding of all of it, and then compare it to what Bitcoin is. And because a statistic means something when it's compared to something else. If I just go, hey, go buy Bitcoin, which I'm not saying to anybody do, but if I said that to somebody, somebody's like, I don't even understand what Bitcoin is. You first need to go look at the source of the problem. And when you look at the source of the problem and you then compare it to Bitcoin's property, one would have to be completely crazy to not understand why Bitcoin is the superior choice. End of my sermon. Hope this serves you guys, okay? At the end of the day, I love doing this, and I'm passionate about it, which is why I wrote my book. Go get the book. Hope it serves you. It's here. It'll be on the link below on YouTube, and I will see you guys on the other side, and I'll see you on future shows. Stay in good spirits for strategy, and stay in good spirits for BMNR, because I think we're going to have a powerful run in the next couple of months, all right? Hope you guys have a great rest of the night. Stay well.